I'm going to ask you guys a question. If, and let me know what to answer in your heads, you don't need to answer out loud. If you find yourself in a career or in a job where you are an admin for orphanages, because I have this is a real life story. Maybe I should tell the story and then ask the question. So years ago, me and my friends, we used to go to a particular orphanage. We delivered food and so a bit of computer science learning for the orphans in the orphanage. And we usually visit them once in a quarter, once in 3 months, 4 months, depending. And there was this lady who was in charge of the orphanage. And the first day we went there, these children were malnourished. So we said, why should we come to teach these people, how to use the computer when they are malnourished? So let us incorporate food into this particular philanthropic venture, if one can call it that. So we started buying we buy food, we contributed money, and we bought a lot of food. And on a monthly basis, we started sending food to this orphanage. But our second visit, there was no improvement. These students were still very malnourished, and we wondered, what's the problem? But again, maybe the food we were getting weren't enough, so we kept on, we upped our supply. And we realized that this lady, who was the admin of this orphanage, was taking the food home. I wasn't giving it to the orphans. And she had family, it's so interesting. Thinking back at it now, she was the one that was glowing up every single time we came back. So we wondered why. We said, we asked the question, these students, these children, you have to give them some time. Sometimes they don't want to eat. But we carried out our investigations, and we found out that every time we brought food to this orphanage, she took it home to give what she called her children. Now, the question I want to ask you is, now let me throw a hypothetical. Let's say this woman was married to a maniacal husband who gave her strict orders that, see, I don't know these children, I don't care about them, but every time they give you food, you must bring it back home. Now, if you're that woman, would you do that? Now, obviously, your answer is going to be, oh, yes, I wouldn't do it. I would say no to it. A lot of people say the same thing about Nazi Germany. Oh, if I was in Nazi Germany, I would have supported the Jews. I would have been against Hitler. I said, you wouldn't have. The chances of you being that is almost close to zero. It's almost close to zero. And it's not that you're a bad person. It's just that the systems around you, the people around you, they're all going to make you to fall victim of it. It's simple. And this is the same thing I talked about. Let's look at the Bible, for example. Judas Iscariot is a very interesting example who betrayed Jesus Christ, right? It didn't start immediately. There were subtle signs. There's a descent into nihilism. There's a descent into wickedness. And for the lady in the orphanages, we realized that it was subtle. It went from, they deliver, let's say, 100 items, she takes 1. Then deliver 100, she takes 10. And it got to a point, she was taking 80%. And she felt no remorse. When we caught her excuses were ridiculous. They were saying, oh, she has children too. She lied about it, said sometimes they were expired. She just told a bunch of lies. We actually stopped. But my point is, at that level where you had kids, and the oldest there was 7 years old or 8 years old. So these are human beings in this same culture, in Nigeria, a very religious country. So my point is, ask yourself those questions. We had another experiment, another experience, where there was this this shop owner who had a sales boy, and every time there is a sale, he'll up the number up. So the price of the inventory may be 1,000 naira. If a customer comes, he says 1,100. Over the months, at a point, he started doubling the price to 2,000 for a particular item on the inventory. And when he was caught, the police accosted him, and several proceedings happened. When he asked him, he didn't feel remorse. He felt, it's just, I just had to. But what happened to that kind of person is that it starts from a subtle hint of evil. Subtle, it's like a white paint. Subtle droplets of black, which black is metaphorical now, symbolic of evil. And it gets to a particular point, the whole canvas is painted dark. So that's the question. Now, we have thought about Hannah's book. We've talked about Philip Zimbardo. We've talked about Christopher Brownie. And all these people had one thing in common. They lacked thinking, not the authors now. What they found was lack of thinking. How exactly is what I'm doing affecting the next person? In Module 2, we'll talk about Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant gives a panacea to this particular problem, where he talks about the categorical imperative. Then we'll talk about that in detail. But the summary of all these stories, and there are several, there's even Unit 731, which I think you guys should study. I mean, not study, but read about it. Unit 731, what the Japanese did, it's evil has happened on this planet, to be honest. But again, those were doctors who, they were not soldiers. These were just typical doctors who got people, dissected them, did medical experiments. Most of the medical research that we enjoy today came from Unit 731. How the body performed under hypothermia, how they infected some of their patients or victims with viruses and bacteria, a lot of nasty, nefarious things. But these were doctors, these were intellectuals. So we all have the ability to fall or to descend into immorality. So, the first illusion, and this is where I begin to wrap up, is evil is committed by evil people. And you will be able to tell who an evil person is, but you are not evil. That's the first illusion. All four of our thinkers destroyed this completely. Each man destroyed it. Each man looked very ordinary. The men in the Battalion 101 were very ordinary. Zimbardo's guards in the Stanford Prison Experiment, very ordinary. The Milgram Experiment, very ordinary people. These were not mentally ill people. These were not people who had any form of extreme mental illnesses. The second illusion is, I will never do that. I will never step out. I would have to refuse. Now, Carl Jung says something. I think I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember it. He said, for you to be a good person, you have to know your potential for evil. So the moment you say you can't do something, you are blinded by the fact that you have the ability to be wicked and evil. Now, some of you have friends, especially in secondary school, who you guys saw were calm, who were good, who were okay, who were, very, in quote, banal. They didn't have they couldn't hurt a fly. 10 years down the line, if you look at some of them today, they may be committing treacherous acts that you would never have been able to fathom those years back. The third illusion is, this was then. This was years ago. The world is a new place right now. We can't compare the 1960s to 2000s or the 20th century with the 21st century and all whatnot. But the truth is that there's so many examples today. We have a lot of people who look up to political figures, and this happens a whole lot in our generation, to be honest. You have either a political figure or even a celebrity, who you love and who you cherish and who you listen to their music or watch their movies or whatnot, and they commit a particular act, and you begin to find excuses just because of you like them. It's like this, you begin to give a lot of excuses just to accommodate your love for them. So that's the third illusion. So the cure to this is thinking. It's the ability to sit back and think about the way you're thinking about it. So they call it metacognition, right? Where you're able to think about how you're thinking. And when you find yourself in those situations where you're being asked to do what is wrong, or even your own self is telling you to do what is wrong, begin to think about why you're thinking the way you're thinking about it. It helps a whole lot. So remember, ordinary people who choose to think, who ask questions, who choose to question, who choose to refuse, can stop almost anything. We have several examples of that. We'll talk about that in Module 3, where people who literally saved the world by stopping to ask themselves some questions. Is this really the right thing to do? Is this the right way to go? And having had those questions answered, they decided to pursue what was good and sustainable. So, summary of term 1 is this. Remember, we spoke about the monster within, or the monster at the door. I have recommended, I call them 4 books, or at least 4 things you should read. The Trial of Out of Each Man by Hannah Arendt, The Banality of Evil, where I had recommended the Lucifer Effect. Now, I know, if you hear Lucifer Effect, like, you will never read that book, please. It's a book you should read. How good people turn evil by Philip Zimbardo. I've recommended the Ordinary Men, the Police Battalion, Reservoir, Battalion 101, The Ordinary Men by Christopher R. Brownie. And I've recommended the Milgram Experiment. It's a Yale University experiment. These are 4 things I think anyone who is listening to this should just read about it and don't see yourself outside the picture. See yourself as the student, as the ordinary man. And the cure to all this deference or subservientness to authority or evil, the panacea, the solution to it, is the ability to sit back and think, or like I said, to think about how you're thinking. And we'll see you in Module 2, where we'll talk about a whole lot about Immanuel Kant, the absolute morality. That produces, that's a detail of the solution that we have proposed, or not we, of the solutions that the 4 authors had proposed, which is thinking. And then in Module 3, we'll talk about Friedrich Nietzsche. I love to talk about Friedrich Nietzsche. So, thank you all so much, and I'll see you in Module 2.
Every person has the potential to be evil, and the impact it has made on me is that I also can be an evil person based upon environment and peer pressure. And thinking is what can also save me from that fact that I also can be an evil person.
And I've learned that we should think before we act. That's the thing, that silence, everyone is evil, everyone has the potential to be evil. Before we answer to authority, you have to think of the effects of what the action will do.
Now I'm very well aware of the fact that we have choices. We have the choice to be good or to be evil.